everyone. This week we are continuing our conversation about kind of the basics surrounding Congress and the legislative branch. So, previous to today, let's review real quick. We saw in Unit 1 that the legislative branch has these two things called expressed powers or implied powers. Our expressed powers are what is directly stated in the Constitution. You can open up a book and literally reference it out of the Constitution. Or Congress has something called implied powers, which is the steps which are necessary in order to complete those expressed powers. Okay, so those aren't the specifically stated things. We're able to have those issues of implied powers because of the necessary and proper clause. Okay, so this is the elastic clause. It essentially leaves a gray area, it leaves it open-ended for what all powers Congress has. Right? Because when we think about Congress and then we look at the Constitution, it may be a wonder of like, wait a minute, why is Congress talking about health care? That wasn't ever stated as one of their powers in the Constitution. Well, it's something that is necessary to the commerce of the United States and all of the different expressed things that are stated as powers for the legislative branch. For those of you who were in person last week, you may remember this, but an example of a difference between expressed and implied powers is me asking a student to go get a drink. And all I ask them to do is to go get a drink, right? Well, that student gets up out of their seat, and I stop them. Are you able to get up out of your seat? And most of the time they're going to look at me and go, you're crazy, I don't know. I'm going to say, okay, you can get out of your seat, keep going. Next, when they get ready to leave my door, I'm going to stop them and say, whoa, 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 whoa. You need a pass, right, in order to go out into the hallway. And they'll look at me and again think, yeah, Miss Herman's crazy, but I guess so. I guess that's a step I need to take to go get a drink. So at this point, we can kind of see that difference where the expressed power is me saying, go get that drink. And that's all I say, go get that drink. But you, as a student, need to get up out of your seat. You need to walk across the classroom. You need to go out into the hallway. And so those are the actions that you need to complete in order to go get that drink. Same with expressed powers and implied powers. Expressed, that's the job of the Constitution for legislature. That's all it says. But there are those in-between gray areas of jobs they need to do in order to complete those expressed powers. Last week, we also took a look at some of the basic structures. So in the House of Representatives, this is the part of Congress that is supposed to represent the people. Okay, so this is 435 total members. It is based off of a state's population for how many members of the House you get. In the Senate, this is more representing the state interests. We get equal representation here, so 100 total members, 2 per state. And we decide how many House of Reps and how many districts are in each state based off of the census. Okay, so we're going to break down some of that districting more this week and some of the issues that have risen up with it. So, getting into that whole districting issue. As we know, our representation in the House of Reps is based off of your state's population. We are able to determine the state population and the United States population based off of what's called the census. This is done every 10 years. Okay, so currently this year we are going through a census year where government officials will do whatever they can in order to get the most accurate count of people. So hopefully you're a minor still at this point, you most likely were counted by your parents, where they got something in the mail or a link through email and they filled out the form and claimed you as a dependent living in their home. So if you haven't seen a census thing going around yet, that's most likely wise because your parents filled that kind of information out for you. Once you get older, you will fill it out for yourself. And it's real basic questions of your age, your location, some basic maybe ethnicity or education questions for you. So after the census has been completed, right, so we're coming to the end of 2020, our census count is going to be ending here soon, we go through something called reapportionment, where after those 10 years, after the census has been completed, the state legislatures reapportion congressional seats, right? So if we find that in Michigan, right, so currently at our standing over the last 10 years, we've had 14 people representing us in the House of Representatives. Now, say they complete the census this year and find that a lot of people have moved out of our state. Well, we may lose one of those 14 people. Maybe we'll only have 13 people representing us in the House of Representatives, again, based off of our population count. Because we may lose a seat, someone else in another state, okay, so another state is going to gain that seat because population has moved around enough. So when a state gains or loses a seat in the House of Representatives, we now have to redraw those district lines in our state. So an old district may be split up into two, and all of these different issues about how do we redraw these district lines start to come about. So these are two big terms that you're going to see a lot through the course of this year: reapportionment, redistricting. Reapportionment is that national level where we're deciding how many seats do different states get. Okay, so right now, like I said, we have 14 seats. If we were to lose or gain a seat based on our population, that's that reapportionment piece of it. Now, redistricting is that state piece of it where we're having to redraw district lines if we have lost or gained a seat. Okay, so you can kind of get a glimpse here at this overall map of how many different seats each state has. Okay, so roughly this is showing you the size of population across the United States as well. Okay, so in Michigan, like I said, we have 14 representatives that represent Michigan's interests, whereas down in Texas, we have 36. All the way over to our largest populous state, which is California, where they have 53 representatives in the House of Reps. Looking at this map, we're able to see that districting piece. Okay, so you're able to see all of the different districts for each state. Now you may notice here in North Dakota and South Dakota, okay, we're looking at that mid-top portion of our country, the entire state is one country. That's because their population is so small compared to everywhere else, they only get one person to represent them in the House of Reps. Compared to, say, Michigan, right? We see all of these little districts here, especially around Detroit, because that's where a lot of our population resides. And it breaks it down completely by, again, our population. So you're going to see here the top of the UP and the Upper Peninsula, that's all represented by one person, essentially, because the population size of the Upper Lower Peninsula and the Upper Peninsula are roughly the same population, equivalent to some of these little itty-bitty districts down here in Detroit. Okay, so this is the reapportionment, looking at states overall. It's a national level issue. Redistricting, that's where you're redrawing these lines based on if you lose or gain different seats. So one of the issues with redistricting is because it's handled at the state level, the redrawing of lines is a state issue. And we see a lot of shady business happening with this. This is where we hear the term gerrymandering, where we see the redrawing of district lines that end up being really funky, and it's to gain advantage for a political party, especially when it comes time for elections. Okay, so again, gerrymandering is it's a political party tool decided at the state level. So the way that we draw our district lines in Michigan is going to be different than, say, Ohio or Indiana. Previously in Michigan, it was decided by our state legislature up until 2018. And we'll come back to this issue later this week, so stay tuned. But in Michigan, up until 2018, it was previously decided by the state legislature. So when you think about political parties, whichever political party has control over the House and Senate at the state level, they are the ones that are going to approve the plan for whichever districting is going to get submitted. So essentially, whichever political party has control of the state, they were the ones that were redrawing district lines whenever a new census was coming out, if you gained or lost a seat. So these are some of our modern gerrymandered districts, which are some of our craziest ones. One of my favorites here is in Illinois. It is kind of on the outer suburbs of Chicago, looking at our 4th district here. Okay, so this area in black, this is all one district. It's almost completely surrounding another district, yet it's still tied in one little piece there off to the left. And because it's still technically one whole district, it's not separated at all, it's completely legal based on what we understand.